Hello, Slicey Dicers. This is Brian with another knife review for you. Today we have the WE Eschaton, the crazy, amazing, beautiful, terrifying looking WE Eschaton, a collaborative effort between brilliant designer Elijah Isham and WE Knives out of China, maker of awesome high-end knives. This is one of two collaborations he's done. This was the first one, actually. I previously reviewed the WE Zeta. We'll show that here in a minute. I'll save that. Very, very neat design. It's beyond that. It is an awesome design. This is basically Elijah Isham and we kind of like, you see the just going off the rails and showing what they could do. Kind of like you see when you look at like, Detroit or Geneva auto shows, cars, car companies have concept cars. They just show what they could do if money was no object and they could just do what they wanted to do, except for in that case, they never make them. This is different. They made it. Limited run of 700, but they made it. Still available on Blade HQ. I just looked. It is still available. And B, it's not ridiculously expensive. It's expensive, don't get me wrong. It's $350, but when you look at the amount of work that went into this thing, $350 seems like a bargain. Once you pick one up and hold it, pictures of it don't do it justice. Just all the stuff that's gone into this is just mind-blowing. And that they actually made it, and actually made it for a somewhat reasonable price is ridiculous. I mean, all this machining, all this work, all this design, and carbon fiber, half titanium integral M390 blade, if it looked normal, it would probably still be $350. For example, Elijah's more normal WE Zeta, also made by WE, obviously, carbon fiber, titanium, is the same price. And as beautiful as this knife is, and as much as if I was going to own one, I'd probably rather have the Zeta because it's actually usable. This is more usable than I expected it to be, but this is very, very usable. It's the same price, So, and I can't believe that like these are the same price. It just blows my mind. But before I get into more mind-blowing stuff, let's get into the stats and do some size comparisons and things here. I'm going to pull up my notes page. We have overall length of 8.8 inches. Again, these are all half-inch squares. Blade length of 3.9 inches. You have a blade thickness of 0.16 at its thickest point, which choose your own adventure on that. Handle width of 0.56 inches and a weight of a pretty light 3 ounces. That's for this carbon fiber version. There is also a full titanium version. Again, it's the half integral. It's still bolted together like this, but just instead of carbon, it's got some blue titanium. That's a little bit heavier, but not a whole lot. Still very light knife. Obviously, you look at it, it's a big knife, but there isn't a lot here. There's a lot of holes. There's a lot of vacuum here. Let's do some size comparisons. Let's compare it against, I just showed you the WE Zeta, so we'll skip that one. You have your Todd Begg Glimpse, also a WE-made knife designed by a very famous designer. You have, what else do we have here? We'll compare it against the ZT0452CF. But the only thing I have that is arguably bigger at the moment. For consistency's sake, we will do the Chris Reeve Sebenza, the large Sebenza. And last but not least, my gussied up paramilitary 2. I had to bring out the fancy one for this one. So a little, definitely bigger than a PM2. Not a small knife. All right, let's get into how let's try and properly review this blade. But it is kind of an art knife, but it is surprisingly usable. But we're going to still try and give it a normal review. This is a loaner. I didn't put a lot of miles on it because it's not mine. So a lot of this is just conjecture from holding it and playing with it for almost a week now. It is I guess you're going to call that a multiple grind Wharncliffe blade. I don't know what exactly else to call it. You do have basically 3 angles going on here. It is Bowler M390. And I love how they just very subtly mark it down here. That's awesome. Good sharpening choil, I guess, but this thing was not going to be fun to sharpen with all these angles, I'm sure. It is a usable blade. I mean, you still have a good normal Wharncliffe up front here if you just cut out all the other stuff. And then you've got this nice flat back here behind also. So it is actually somewhat usable blade shape. All these holes, obviously, you're going to catch a bunch of stuff. I can't comment on how good of a slicer it would be. I think back here it'd probably be a pretty decent slicer. Again, it's not that thick. It's all flat ground. I didn't cut much with it because it's not mine. I didn't cut anything with it because it's not mine, and it is an expensive limited edition knife. But I think it's a semi-usable blade other than the holes. I know I heard Elijah Isham say once he batoned with the prototype, and I don't think he was joking. He doesn't seem like a guy who jokes a lot, so I don't know. It's probably tougher than it looks. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about the toughness of it all. It's just all those multiple angles and stuff. It's going to be a bit complicated if you go into big cutting jobs with it. I do know some guys on Instagram who say they carry them all the time and use them, and it works great. So I'm just going to take their word for it. But look at all those grinds and stuff in there. It is amazing. All that machine work. Wow. Wow. It's just, it's really cool. You can see the only other marking on it. This is 44 of 700. Beautifully done blade. Just a lot of thought and effort and time in front of a computer designing that. I'm absolutely certain. It is very, very cool. Ergonomics, really shockingly good. You look at this in a picture and you think that's going to be the most uncomfortable thing ever. It looks like it was designed by Star Trek Next Generation era Klingons. It looks like a Next Generation Klingon weapon, doesn't it? It just looks like something that Worf would have as a holdout weapon. And this is what I think about it every time I look at it. But when you grab it, man, it ain't bad. It ain't bad, I gotta say. It's got this liner lock that's attached back here to the titanium. It is jimped so you can get a good grip on it, but it doesn't cut into your fingers at all or anything. It's good. There are, believe it or not, you're not going to believe me, there aren't really any hot spots on this, any really hardcore hot spots. You can feel the clip a little bit, but it's a beautiful clip, but you can feel it just a little bit. But other than that, like the holes don't bother me or anything. It's okay. You move your thumb up here. That does make a great little thumb ramp. It is an actually usable knife. Absolutely it is, especially ergonomically. And it carries well, too. You have this beautifully done pocket clip. Just gorgeous. And when it's in your pocket, this giant crazy knife, and all that's sticking out is that. That's all you can see out of your pocket is just that little bit, which is fine. Like, that's very subtle. So it's got a subtle little bit sticking out, and no one knows the craziness that resides within your pants when you are carrying this knife. Deployment, also good. It's got the usual tiny little flipper tab. Isham seems very fond of these. It works great on this. On the Zeta, I preferred to finger flick it. He likes multiple deployments methods. It works great. The detent is just perfectly dialed in for that little tiny tab. And you can Spidey flick it also. I'm not able to thumb flick it though. That's one thing I can't really get. My particular thumb, I can slow open it, but I'm having a really hard time with. I guess I got it there, but it's very difficult to thumb open it. But finger flick and that tab both work great. As I said, it carries well. I was surprised by this. I just was going to kind of write it off as an art knife, and I just was going to spend the whole review just talking about all the different machining things, which I could. You could talk about it for half an hour. I mean, I do love those aspects of it. Just I love the half integral design with the bolted on carbon up front or bolted on titanium, depending on which one you get. I love these half enclosed logos and stuff, and the adjustments, the collar around the adjustment screw being half enclosed in the carbon. I think that's really cool. Everything about this knife is just super cool. And you glance at it, like at a passing glance, and you might think, oh, it looks like a Mull-Ninja knife. I've heard some people say that. Yeah, wait till you see one in person. It does not look like a Mull-Ninja knife. This looks like a $1,000 custom. It's very well done. The design, that's going to be if it's your cup of tea or not. It's honestly not mine. I mean, I wouldn't buy one of these. I don't really have much of a desire to have one, but I get why people get them just because of the quality, and it is more usable than you think. And it is just if you appreciate the engineering and the design of it, it's just great just to show, and it does exactly what we wanted it to do. Just we and Elijah just showing what they can do when they're off the chains, and it's beautiful and in its own way. I mean, I don't know if I call this beautiful. It's cool. It looks awesome in its own way. It's like I said, looks like a Klingon holdout weapon, and there's definitely a market for it. They are still available. Limited run of 700. I just looked on Blade HQ before I started this video. They were still available. So as of this recording, which is Wednesday the 22nd of March, they're still available. So $350. If you can appreciate the engineering that's done on this thing, it's worth it. If you're buying it just to put as a safe queen, I'm no expert on knife inflation, but it's $350, which is very reasonable for what you get. Elijah Esham's one of the most up-and-coming designers. He's the most up-and-coming designer in the knife world. He's still young. He's pumping out awesome stuff. I mean, you've got the Zeta. He's talking about starting to do some of his own customs. He's done lots of knife designs for other people. There's a new Kaiser Theta coming out, which I'm going to jump on one of those. And that, as far as I understand, is a production knife. So that one I'm really excited about, because that was one that Esham that I would use. Yeah, he's an up-and-coming guy. I could totally see buying one of these, sitting on it for a year and a half, keeping an eye on the prices on blade forums, etc. I could totally see getting $500 for one of these in a year and a half. I totally could. And in the meantime, you have this beautiful little thing to play with, even if you never carry it. And to me, I think that's worth it to a lot of people. It's not tempting to me, but I could see why people would do that. And again, I will emphasize, more usable than you think. It's not just crazy design. It is actually usable. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I've now satisfied my requirements as a knife YouTuber. I think it is in the fine print that you must have a WE Eschaton review, and now I do. So I hope I can keep my license for another couple of days. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I've been Brian. Have a good one.